Hello, everyone. Brother Al McClaney with this week's stewardship video. And we're going to continue our series on creating a spending plan. And we're going to specifically highlight a concept called building the four walls. And I've got a video from the Ramsey Group, which is a great resource I've mentioned before, that's going to talk about that concept of building your four walls. But before we go too far, no advice should be seen as a recommendation, as I am not a licensed financial advisor and is for educational purposes only. I continue with the slide of the compass because, as Dave Ramsey says, using a spending plan or a budget is telling your money where to go versus wondering where it went. And there's also two scriptures that I've been highlighting, and this was in the previous video that we did about taking inventory using math to discover fact versus fiction. Proverbs 27:23 says, be sure you know the condition of your flocks. Give careful attention to your herds. And we're not talking about sheep herders. We're talking about our income, which is a sheep herder. The income producing asset would be sheep. But in our case, we're talking about our money, knowing the status of our money, knowing where it goes, where it's coming from, where we're spending it on, what's the trends in the last couple of months of where we've been spending our money, and also acting on that by using the spending plan to tell our money where to go. Luke 14:28 and 30 in the Message Bible says, is there anyone here who planning to build a house doesn't first sit down and figure the cost so you'll know if you can complete it? So that's another concept, and we're just spreading concepts along the way as we talk about the spending plan, meaning you make the budget or the spending plan before the month begins. In my case, I've got mine planned all the way to the end of the year. So the further out you're doing the planning and using the biblical principles to set up that budget, the better you're going to be. So this two scriptures are going to set us up as we start going into the four walls. And the four walls are important because they highlight making sure we have our necessities, our needs taken care of first versus our wants. But the first one is the foundation. And we're going to go further into that next week about talking about the foundation, and then further into the last week of August, a whole section on foundation. You see what I'm talking about. In Matthew 6:33 and 34 and Amplified, it says, but first and foremost, importantly, seek his kingdom and his righteousness, his way of doing and being right, the attitude and character of God, and all these things will be given unto you. And if you go back and read that whole Matthew 6, starting, I think is verse 25 or verse 20, and it goes through about the needs we have and that how God takes care of those if we seeking him first. And then First Timothy 5:8 talks about making sure we care and provide for our family. Again, needs first. If anyone fails to provide for his own, and especially for those of his own family, he is denied the faith by disrespecting his precepts and is worse than an unbeliever who fulfills his obligation in these matters. So this goes back to this concept of the four walls. And you'll see when he talks about the four walls, he's talking about housing, utilities, food, transportation, and clothing. And that specific transportation is for work. Then others have used the four walls as such as being housing. Then they put one of them, of the four walls, is utilities, then food and transportation. In this case, Dave Ramsey combines the housing with the utilities, and then he says transportation, clothing. So he splits those out. But the four walls basically means we're talking about making sure your necessities are taken care of first. So when you're planning your budget, that goes in. Then we'll talk about the foundation is, I say, giving unto the Lord. That forms the foundation of those four walls. And we'll get more into that in the next 2 weeks. So let's look at this video.
Being behind on your bills can be a very scary place. Starting baby step 1 is a great goal, but if you're behind, right now you need to get current on your bills. Don't even worry about your beginner emergency fund of $1,000. Pay your bills first. You need to take care of what we call the four walls. These are basic things we all need: food, shelter and utilities, transportation, and clothing. So what do you do first? Eat. Buy food for your family. That's the very first thing you do. The next thing you do is keep the lights and water on. After paying utilities, take care of shelter. That means pay the rent or mortgage. Then you move on to transportation. And once you know you can get where you need to go with gas in the tank, then you can take care of your basic clothing needs. Don't go all out on brand name fashion. Just buy what you need. Here's a tip. Don't get behind on your home and be current on your MasterCard and your student loan. If you're going to be behind on something, choose to hold off on things that don't matter as much. They're called unsecured creditors. Creditors that don't have any security. They don't have a lien on anything. They're not going to take away basic necessities of your life. If you have a place to live, it's warm, and the lights are on, your stomach is full, and you have clothing to wear and a way to get to work, you live to fight another day. The four walls are in place, and worry starts to slip away. When your lights are about to be cut off, but you've paid your MasterCard bill, that's when life starts spinning out of control. You won't win in that situation. Put the four walls of your home up first. Then, work your way through the other stuff. It's all about priorities.
And that's important when we're talking about doing our spending plan. And you can see, you can go out to daveramsey.com and you can get more specifics about the four walls. And also, in next week, I'll give you a specific link out to Dave Ramsey that's gives you like step-by-step setting up a budget, because we're going to get into more details called the line items next week. So you notice he references that $1,000. Well, that's the emergency fund, and we talked about that a couple of weeks ago. So if you need to go back and review, and I encourage you to do that, I've laid out, and you can pause the video. Here are the dates and the subject matter of each one of those videos. We talked about emergency fund, counting the cost, God's vision, because we talked about starting off, you need to have what's God's vision, and that's how you start to create your spending plan around it. Having the right mindset, getting started. Last week I was talking about how do you take an inventory, how do you track your spending, and now we're talking about the four walls. I'm anticipating, unless God says differently, that next week we're going to talk about something that's the line items of the spending plan. And as I said before, the spending plan is a great tool for you to use, because as Dave Ramsey says, instead of wondering where your money went, because you're being proactive in creating the budget or spending plan before the month, you're telling your money where to go. And so I encourage you, go back, revisit these, listen to them again, and then you'll see also utilize those tools that I've set out there. Your Money Counts is one of the Howard Dade's book. That's an ebook that's free to you. Go out, listen to these videos, watch the videos again, pause them, take notes, go back out and review them as needed. And we'll continue this on in the next couple of weeks regarding the spending plan, which again, I believe is the most important thing when it comes to helping you save, come up with your emergency plan, having, and that's what we're talking about next week, line item for getting out of debt. All of these things come through that spending plan, right? Using the biblical principles, okay? So let's go on, change channels, if you will, or direction just a little bit. Start looking at the market. We're now August 15th, halfway through the month of August, month 8. We're starting to come down a little bit on our earnings announcement. This week's theme could be retail. So we're going to be looking at a lot of giants of retail that are reporting. You got your Walmarts out there, your Home Depot, you got Target, Lowe's. So we've got retail, consumer, and of course, home related, TJ Maxx, Kohl's, Ross, Estee Lauder. So we're going to get a good idea. Are people coming back with their spending patterns a little bit more? And I was out over the weekend during the week and looking at the shopping mall, and it is packed out there. So people are out there getting their spend on, as you say. And we'll see Foot Locker is also. So this is a good representation of earnings from consumer type companies that we'll be hearing about. Again, once again, when I'm mentioning these companies, because I'm about to mention some based on legislation that President Biden, by the time this video comes out, would have signed. It was the Inflation Reduction Act. He's also already signed that CHIP Act, and we talked about that. Remember, these are not recommendations. I'm not a licensed financial advisor, but it's designed to get you to be thinking about, hey, could these be some opportunities and ideas that could be investable for me? Oh, I just saw Bath Body and Works. They're reporting. So we have a lot of consumer companies that are reporting this week of August 15th. So here's the legislation I was talking about. Now, a couple of videos ago, we talked about the CHIP Act. And of course, that's a huge investment in semiconductors. So, thinking of through the years, are there some potential opportunities in those companies as that money starts flowing into those companies for semiconductor? Well, the Inflation Reduction Act has a lot of climate control legislation in there and subsidies. So I took a screenshot picture of this from CNBC. Again, these are not recommendations, but go do your own research. There could be opportunities for you. You can see solar stocks could be something you look at. Electric vehicle stocks. One that's not up here is Ford has really been getting into electric vehicles. The obvious one is Tesla. Now you may look at it and say, Tesla, $885 a share. That's a little bit rich for my blood. But don't forget those stock slices, for instance, that Charles Schwab has, or Fidelity has fractional slices. And I think there's other ways you can do it. I want to even say like the Cash App gives you, different Cash Apps gives you the ability to do slices, meaning as low as like $5 a share when it comes to some of these stocks. So don't let the price dissuade you from thinking of investing in those. So you can go and research and say possibly, this is losing the legislation to your benefit, and maybe there are opportunities there. The other one is all companies. And you may say, wait a minute, the legislation is to climate control, and all companies opposite. Not so fast. Occidental is an example of a company that's an integrated energy company. They've changed their look. Exxon Mobil is another one, and that symbol is XOM. In this case, Occidental is the one I highlighted because did you know Warren Buffett now owns 20% in this company? Warren Buffett is a good stock picker, and he has proven this through the years, and he's just been buying up parts of Occidental, and you can see it's been rising. This is a chart I just pulled on it. So maybe you go look at it, OXY, even at its current price of $65.73, that's pretty reasonable. But I think it's a stock slice. If you go out and look at Charles Schwab and probably Fidelity, you don't have to pay $65. You can do slices of that share. So maybe this is something you want to look at. Again, not a recommendation. Do your own research. Let's look at the overall market before we close out this week. I had drawn the lines. I actually moved my lines from the previous. If you can see my cursor right here was where those lines were for. Finally got through that resistance. Now it went through the next level of resistance. It peaked through there last week. So we've got buying going on in the market. The next level really of resistance, it closed at $330.39. That's QQQ, which is predominantly smaller companies and technology. It closed at $330.39. The next level of resistance is around $349. So from there, it could be a healthy move up to that group, because if you look, that's the next level of resistance. Right now, this is probably sitting at support. Let's look at SPY. Same thing. Last week, I had the lines drawn around here. It went through that level of resistance. It's heading to a level of resistance. It's going to take some energy to get through that because that's sitting at about $428, and it closed at $427.10 on Friday. So if it gets through that, then the next level is probably up here at like $445. So it could be a nice little run. If it gets through this, we could be maybe effectively out of a bear market. But remember what we said before, and this is what all the pundits and the analysts have said, even during bear markets, there have been swings of bull phases still in a bear market. So that happens. Doesn't mean we're totally out of it, because people are still saying, or the people meaning some of the pundits are saying, they feel we're still headed to a recession. It may just be pushed back now to much later in the year, or even into 2023. We'll see. Okay, that's it for this week. And as I said, go back, look at those videos. You can rewind that chart of all the different spending plan, because I'm very serious and and committed on that tool of the spending plan. And we'll talk more about the power of what I call the line items next week, and then we'll talk about the foundation of your four walls in the next coming weeks. So as always, you can go out to YouTube, look and search under my name, Al McClaney. You can see all the previous videos. You can go all the way back almost 2 years now, but specifically the ones that were mentioned in that slide of the last 4 or 5 weeks that we've done specifically related to the spending plan. You can always email me for any questions or any tools that you can't seem to find. I can send you the link. And as I said before, you can email dcraddock at sjbcfamily.com, and I'll put you on the distribution list for the St. John Baptist Church. And part of that is every Wednesday, there is a section that has the stewardship video embedded in there. And as my pastor Denny White Davis says, who's celebrating this weekend, we went out to the ballpark, Texas Ranger Park, celebrating his 60th birthday. And he has a big celebration going on after church services on Sunday. Happy birthday to him. And as he says, have a good week. Remember to keep a good spirit. And as we say on the stewardship video, remember Jesus is Lord, therefore he's the owner, but we are his faithful stewards, following his biblical principles when it comes to his finances and resources. We'll see you next week.